I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is, what is today? It's Monday, the 18th. My goodness. Doesn't it feel like Thanksgiving should have already happened by now? It kind of feels that way to me. But, of course, it's Thanksgiving is going to be so late this year. And then that means we get like an abbreviated Christmas holiday. And so the Christmas lights are up, man. Not my lights. My lights are not up yet. But, I mean, I'm seeing the lights all over, and that's fantastic. I love it. I'm not one of these guys that gets upset for early Christmas decorations. I mean, sometimes it can be overwhelming. I mean, I told you about my experience at Walmart the other day, but I'm not a guy that ever is going to get too upset by early Christmas decorations because it is the most wonderful time of year, folks. You realize that. That's not just a phrase in a song. Telephone number is 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the program. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the great silence at the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. On Friday, it had been 10 days since we broke the story of Governor Asa Hutchinson's son being on a trip with him in China, and then we discovered that the same clients that Asa has given taxpayer money are the same Chinese clients that are using the governor's law firm, run now by his son, we think, to get, well, what we think are visas. We're not really sure the extent of the work, but the bottom line is Chinese communist entities disguised as companies are paying the governor's law firm, and they're also going to be locating here in Arkansas while taking advantage of taxpayer incentives and cash payments from the governor's Quick Action Closing Fund. This is not news. Apparently, this is not news to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. It was sort of news to KATV, the ABC affiliate. It was sort of news to them for one story. I mean, I haven't seen it anywhere else. Let me go one more time. As of broadcasting, you Google Asa Hutchinson, just making sure there's nothing current. No, the only thing you get is Governor Asa Hutchinson promoting the new sales tax for highways, kicking off the highway funding campaign. That started Friday, and the campaign is claiming it doesn't raise your taxes. It's very deceptive. Of course, we knew they were going to do this. But the governor is essentially going to go around the state now campaigning for a tax increase. Because the bottom line is this. Right now, according to the law, if the vote in 2020 fails, your taxes go down. The governor wants them to stay the same. Right now, though, I'll tell you this. Right now, according to the statute, before they did this whole stupid election where they sent it back to the people, the law was going to be clear. This thing was going to go away in 2022. And now we're going to, because of a vote of the legislature, they voted to raise your taxes. They voted to amend the statute that was going to lower your taxes. Pathetic. It really is. I think we can defeat this thing, by the way, especially if the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette and other media outlets or the mainstream media actually report the appearance of impropriety with the governor and his son and the communist Chinese, then all of a sudden the governor's campaign for this sales, no one's going to really trust him as much. No one's going to really trust the guy as much if we can get this story out. And we're going to continue to talk about this. The great silence at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Conduit for Action. This was out yesterday. It notes that on November 5th, Conduit News reported that Governor Asa Hutchinson was in China for meetings with communist Chinese businesses that have received or may want to receive Arkansas tax dollars as incentives to open a factory in Arkansas. The surprising part of the story was the governor's son, Asa Hutchinson III, was also on the trip, representing Chinese clients. In fact, the governor's law firm represents more than one Chinese firm that has received your taxpayer dollars awarded by the governor. Has the Arkansas Democrat Gazette covered the story? We thought it worse. The paper would write a fuzzy story glossing over the issue. 12 days later, Sunday, November 17th, the Democrat Gazette is still ignoring the story of what looks like self-dealing by the governor to enrich his family and maybe himself. Not newsworthy? Perhaps the Democrat Gazette has decided a politician's son making money with his father's connections is not newsworthy. No, that can't be, because the Democrat Gazette has published many such stories. Just consider the many times the paper has written about Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden concerning Ukrainian deals and Chinese connections. Not just aware, or maybe they're just not aware of the story, perhaps with all the cutbacks and the staff. They're just not, they haven't been made privy to the story. But that's not true, because John Brummett, one of their columnists, was asked on a talk show about Asa III being on the trip. And so he knew about it. Not just, is there no room in the paper? Maybe they don't have room to write about it. Have you read the Arkansas Democrat Gazette? There's plenty of stories of minor interest. They're inserted in there all the time just to fill space. What if the Arkansas Democrat Gazette just likes Asa? Maybe the Democrat Gazette just likes the governor and his family as pleasant people and doesn't care how his dealings look. Maybe the Arkansas Democrat Gazette are dependent on the governor in some way. We wonder about the financial pressures on the Gazette, the Democrat Gazette, and the publication's dependence on the good graces of whoever is the governor. Think about this. The Democrat Gazette has a sales tax exemption, and every few years, politicians talk about taking it away. Democrat Gazette makes money also on posting legal notices. There has been talk about the state saving money by taking away the notices and instead having the state agencies post the notices on the internet. After all, the Democrat Gazette is moving to an all-internet publication other than Sunday, which means taxpayers are already going to the internet to see legal notices, but are having to pay a newspaper subscription to see them. State advertising. The Democrat Gazette also gets paid for advertisements by state agencies, and they want that business to keep coming. Sometimes the advertisements merely say something along the lines of, "Yay for us," or "Yay for the governor." It's not just the Democrat Gazette receiving money from state advertising. Other news outlets benefit from this as well, which is why often nothing more than fluff pieces get written about these agencies. It is of note that Conduit for Action takes no money from the government. Neither does Conduit News. Takes no money from the government. Newspapers across the country are struggling. The Democrat Gazette is no different. We want to see them succeed, but we also are concerned about dependence on the state and what else might be omitted by them and other mainstream outlets. It is of note KATV did run one story on the China Asa trip and have heard nothing from them since, even though we were told by their anchor. I'm sure we'll hear more about this. Wonder if they're now on the naughty list. That story is up right now at conduitforaction.org. Check it out. Share this with your friends. You've got to share these stories on social media and at the water cooler, in fact. I was interested in some people were commenting on the Facebook thread, of the Conduit for Action page. And they said, I don't know what I'm sure. What are they silent about? What's the Democrat Gazette silent about? Well, you just got to read the article. I mean, it's in there. But then to see this guy get educated on what the governor has done, and really just the hubris, the arrogance, I don't know, it's just the assumption that you're politically bulletproof. The governor actually thought this would be okay to take his son on China and it wouldn't be news, and he was right. He was absolutely right, by the way. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, given the fact that the media has largely ignored this story, why wouldn't you assume you could do it? I mean, there must be some kind of agreement. There must be some sort of understanding between the Arkansas Democrat Gazette and Governor Asa Hutchinson. This is a huge story. Nothing. Crickets. I've been asking for a year, why China? Why China? Okay, we think we know the answer. It's because the governor's law firm is receiving money from the communist Chinese that nobody knew about before. Or maybe they did, but nobody would say anything. That the governor's son is now benefiting from his daddy's name. Okay? A lot of people were whispering about that for a long time. So now we know potentially why China. And now the question is, why does anyone want to talk about China? And what is not in this article is something I speculated about on Friday, which is the Chinese have a very long reach. Are they paying publications as well? We know that they pay publications to put their propaganda in agricultural magazines, the same agricultural publications that go out to rural areas and the states that Donald Trump won, and this was thought to be in an effort to undermine the president and the tariffs in the trade war. And these publications happily take the Chinese money to publish their articles and propaganda. Could the same thing be happening here? I really think there's something more to this, by the way, because you have to understand that the communist Chinese gave $50 million. They invested in the platform Reddit. Joe, did you remember this? Reddit, China, $50 million. Real quick, I think it's $50 million. Well, maybe it's more than that. Hang on. Reddit, China, invest. Let me say Reddit, China investment. Let me write that in. It was a large sum, $150 million, not $50 million. Reddit got a $150 million investment from China. Now, it was a Chinese company, but that doesn't mean anything. Okay, so $150 million invested in a platform that a lot of people use for really all kinds of stuff. But if you ever look at the front page of the news, it's just totally skewed leftist and leaning liberal. So all I'm telling you right now is it's quite possible that the same thing's happened. And the fact that they're not reporting it, I mean, you know, it's terrible when the news is now the news. Like the Arkansas Democrat Gazette is now in the news, as far as I'm concerned, because they haven't reported on this. And that's unfortunate when your news deliverer is now called into question. And it's not the first time, but it's got to be one of the first times when you've got the guy who's got the highest office in the state of Arkansas is implicated in something that looks terrible, that you and I both know the people of Arkansas would be completely outraged to know. The more people that find out, the more outraged they get, and there's silence. And so they are completely violating the trust that the people of Arkansas give them by not at least reporting on it, that the governor took his son to China. Oh, he paid his own way. Well, actually, did he? Asking journalistic questions, did he pay his own way? If it came out of the governor's law firm, well, that law firm is receiving money from the Chinese. The same, it's just a revolving door of where does the taxpayer money go? The telephone number is 870-275-9799. Very, very frustrated that this has still not been picked up by anybody. And at the same time, on Friday, the governor running around, talking about how we've got to pass this half-cent sales tax increase for highways. I mean, how are we supposed to take that seriously until he answers serious questions? How do we know that the construction firms that are going to get the contracts aren't using the governor's law firm. How do we know that? Literally everything the man does now has got to be held up into suspicion. You legislators listening, the governor calls you, asks you for your vote. How in the world can you trust his request until he answers these serious questions? Until he answers, is he still counsel for this law firm? If he's not, when did that change? Until he answers, not why your son was on the trip with you, but until he answers why his son is making money off of the same clients that you're giving taxpayer money to. And if his answer is, listen, nothing illegal has been done, then that's an answer. Maybe that's the truth. Let's say that it is the truth. Let's say that the governor just says, you know what? There's nothing illegal that's been done here. My son's got to make a living. This is just part of politics. How many of you out there will be okay with that? Now, some of you will. You'll just kind of, bow down to the seat of power. Yeah, that's what you'll do. But some of you won't. His credibility is waning here. And I just have to say, what in the world did Michael Lamoureux resign from the governor's office for? No, I know the official response from the governor's office was like, Michael's great. He's going on to seek governor. Everybody and their mom knows that Michael Lamoureux resigned from the governor's chief of staff because the Associated Press reported that he took $120,000 in consulting fees when the group he was working for, the nonprofit, only raised $140,000 that year. And that was in 2013, and that group was founded. That particular nonprofit got inundated with donations from lobbyists, big tobacco, and nursing homes. Coincidentally, again, that's the same year we also got Medicaid expansion here in the state when Republicans said they would never do it, and then they were paid to do it, apparently. So, what did he really resign for? He resigned because a lot of people thought that there were charges coming. A lot of people still think that. Michael Lamoureux fits the description, for example, of what happened with that South Arkansas Youth Services, the guy named Walsh, and I think was Cranford involved with that as well. Anyway, I guess my point is I was just sitting here thinking, there have been examples, at least the real folks, the people who will be real with you. There are definitely examples of the appearance of impropriety and the quiet hush under the rug exiting of somebody. And by the way, Lamoureux was in the paper this weekend being quoted in the story about why Josh Mahoney, this Democrat, had to drop out of the race 2 hours after the Republican Party of Arkansas releases a memo. Oh, man. I'm telling you what. That was pretty funny. You guys remember this? Let's talk about it when we come back, okay? Hey, we got a great show for you. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to talk about whether or not the health insurance companies should be split up, should be broken up. Is it time for that to happen? We're going to be talking with the president of the Institute for Liberty, Andrew Langer. He's got a couple of articles that have been posted up at townhall.com this year, one in August, another in September. The insurance industry collusion is causing healthcare costs to soar. Is it time to break up the big health insurance companies? We'll be talking to him. Then State Representative Brant Smith coming up at 7:30. Don't want to miss this. We'll be back in 1 minute. Stay tuned.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I wanted
is
to welcome
building a
back to
liberty
Arkansas
machine.
Chairman
Find out
Chu.
more at conduitnews.com.
So apparently there was a memo that was released. The Tom Cotton campaign sent a memo to top supporters and basically saying, listen, this Josh Mahoney guy is not who he says he is. And so filing closes last week. The Democrats are really upset about this. It's so funny to me. This is well played by the Republican Party of Arkansas, by the way. It really is. I have to say that this is really, I mean, I don't have all of the facts, but it appears that you guys did some great Oppo research and just kind of sat back and kicked your feet up and waited for filing to close and then just like hit the send button and then just watch the world crumble for the Democratic Party. It is actually really, really funny to me because I'm a fan of Tom Cotton. And, of course, Mahoney had no chance anyway. But this means that Cotton has this giant war chest. He can also really be utilized now to help other Republicans downtick and really across the nation. But so Brian Colas, who's the campaign manager for Tom Cotton, or I guess he's the departing campaign manager, has knowledge of this memo that was sent to Cotton supporters. And Frank Lockwood, by the way, has the story here. And a lot of people in the other media outlets like the Arkansas Times, they're really angry at Frank Lockwood's access to Senator Cotton, by the way. They don't like it. But the National Republican Senatorial Committee, at the same time you had the Republican Party of Arkansas announced as soon as the filing closed that they would file a complaint with the Federal Election Commission accusing Mahoney of lying on campaign-related federal paperwork. The National Republican Senatorial Committee, at the same time, they were saying that this guy doesn't really even have a job and can't even remember the last time he was employed. According to Brian Colas, other damaging material that has not been made public was going to be made public, and it was going to be pretty devastating. And so 2 hours after that memo was sent out, 2 hours with the, in tandem of the National Senatorial Committee and then the State Committee, Mahoney just said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm dropping out of the race. And the funny thing is he gave the answer you're not supposed to give. He didn't consult with anyone in the Democrat Party. So legally, he basically was like, my family's sick, and that apparently is not going to fly when it comes to the Democrats now wanting to replace him on the ticket. The law is pretty clear that he didn't give a correct answer, from what I can tell, a correct reason for dropping out. And so I don't think the Democrats are going to field a candidate and have anybody on the ballot to run against Tom Cotton. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is unheard of. That is unheard of. It's the equivalent of it's the equivalent of the prior. Remember when Tom Cotton was running against Mark Pryor to unseat him, the Democrat, and I cannot remember the name of the website, but they had they had some website they released that was an anti-Tom Cotton website, like The Truth About Tom Cotton or something like that. And at the press conference, the imagery that was on the front of the podium was the wrong website. And so the Republican, the campaign of Tom Cotton went ahead and bought that domain and redirected it to a pro-Tom Cotton page. It was hilarious. It's kind of like that, except it's only gotten worse for the Democrats. It's only gotten worse for them. We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So, Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Li to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. So back in August, I've got this headline here. August 15th of this year, over at townhall.com, collusion is causing healthcare costs to soar. It's by a guy by the name of Andrew Langer. Also, we have, is it time to break up the big health insurance companies? This was back in September of this year. Again, a gentleman by the name of Andrew Langer, who is president of the Institute for Liberty. Andrew, you're on the line. How's it going this morning?
It's going great. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I love the title of these articles. You know, I've asked these questions for a long time, and right now it seems like people are debating this policy of price controls and trying to, well, just in your words, what's going on right now with health insurance companies?
Well, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, there are two different ways to look at it, right? If you look back at the way our financial system tipped over in 2007 and 2008, and we had these banks that were too big to fail. We enacted a bunch of reforms that were supposedly aimed at preventing this, and of course, those financial institutions became even too bigger to fail. The same thing happened in healthcare. The Affordable Care Act was supposed to, bring prices down for consumers, make healthcare more accessible. And instead, because essentially you had the big HMOs writing the legislation along with the Democrats, They saw it as much in the same way that socialism is the transitional phase between capitalism and communism. The circumstances we're in now are the transitional phase between a more market-oriented approach to healthcare and the eventual either single-payer system or out-and-out government takeover. And so the smaller health insurance, the smaller HMOs could not handle the mandates. So there was consolidation. There were folks who left the marketplaces.
Yep.
And we're left with these big HMOs that are essentially able to gin the process. And it all culminates right now in what is an important debate over how to deal with surprise medical billing, which we can get into. And you've got one side sort of talking about price controls, and we all know, if you know anything about a market system, anytime you impose price controls in a market-based environment, that's how you destroy the marketplace.
Yes. Absolutely. And so what's the other option? I mean, because I'm a free market guy, I'm a limited government guy, but I also know that the government is so involved in our healthcare decisions, and it's actually worse than that. The line between the government and the private health insurance companies is so blurry. Here in my state of Arkansas, we expanded Medicaid, but we did it by giving $600 a month per person to Blue Cross and Blue Shield, regardless of whether or not they go to the doctor or not. And so at this point, I don't know what to do, because I don't really feel bad for the insurance companies if they get broken up, but I do kind of lament the fact that I am now looking to the government to try to come up with some solution when it was the government and the health insurance industry in the first place that created the problem. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's start here with the surprise medical billing issue, which is the proximate issue. And it's this idea that if you go into a hospital for a procedure and somewhere along the way, it's sort of the chain of custody that you have, somebody out of your market somehow gets involved in it, and all of a sudden you're stuck with a bill of, several $1,000s. The government doesn't have to institute price controls to deal with that. I mean, essentially there can be a mandate moving forward that says, if everybody in a hospital system that is in the chain of a particular patient needs to accept that medical insurance, that patient's medical insurance, otherwise they can't be involved in all this. Or if there's some kind of an emergency, then the hospital has to eat the cost. That sort of institutes some kind of discipline here in the situation. On the other, and then with the other part of it, which is the existing surprise medical bills, then you submit it to arbitration and you have some kind of negotiation. That's one way to look at it. But more importantly and more generally, when we're talking about healthcare and healthcare reform, our politicians need to take a cue from the Hippocratic Oath and first, take the idea that first they should do no harm. Let's not harm the situation more than it already is. And it is, you're absolutely correct. We have thoroughly flummoxed this healthcare system to the point where there really is no actual marketplace. And then what we need to do is we need to start moving in the direction of getting rid of the mandates and regulations and red tape that prevent that marketplace from happening. And we need to essentially look at the environment in which if an actor in the marketplace is advocating for particular policies, they can't be using the power of government to create a competitive advantage, which is the very essence of cronyism.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened in the Affordable Care Act. You had the big HMOs writing the legislation, and they were taking on increased amounts of regulation because they knew that they could drive their smaller competitors out of the marketplace.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And then, not to mention, what do they do with all this money? They also give it to political action committees that are going to support the politicians that are going to continue to vote for their interests. And I mean, I've seen it right here. It's just amazing, how many people campaigned not to, for example, expand Medicaid, and then they did just that because it was so much money that was going to come in, and there were all this short-term thinking. Go ahead.
Here's the handy guide, real quick. Here's the handy guide that we use when we talk about money in politics. If someone is spending money in politics to advance policies that benefit everyone, that give everybody a shot, sort of level the playing field, that's money that's well spent. But if someone is spending money in politics because they know they're going to get something out of government at the other end, whether it is a competitive advantage or whether it is actual cash, right? So Blue Cross and Blue Shield getting $600 a month per patient, regardless of whether or not that patient goes to the doctor, that's a problem. That's the transactional nature of politics. And you and I both know the only way you can deal with that is by curtailing the power of government to give out those large sums of money to people.
Yeah.
That's the only way you deal with it.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. We're talking with the president of the Institute for Liberty, Andrew Langer. He had this article in August, townhall.com, collusion is causing healthcare costs to soar. Let's talk about this other one, where you asked the question in September, is it time to break up the big health insurance companies? What say you, sir?
Well, I mean, this gets into, you and I are on the same page here. We're both loath to use the power of government to interfere in the marketplace and to break these companies up. But again, it's a situation, the issue of antitrust is very straightforward. It deals with the issue of cronies, and cronies are the folks who are going to use their power to expand the size of government to keep their competitors out of the marketplace. And once that happens, then we have to take a long, hard look at the situation. Now, of course, the problem is, if they are big enough to influence policy to keep their competitors out of the marketplace, then they're hugely big enough to keep themselves from getting broken up. And in that instance, then we really have to look at this. I mean, listen, as I said, I'm not someone who believes in the concept necessarily of too big to fail. We saw what happened in 2009, 2010, when the Obama administration came in and the CFPB was created, and it had the opposite impact of what it was intended. But nevertheless, right, we need to be looking and saying, if we want to have an actual marketplace, a competitive marketplace, that means more actors have to be in it. That means, removing the mandates that prevent the smaller actors from being able to participate. And then if it means breaking up the biggest actors so that they can't engage in that competitive advantage, then that's what it means.
One part of this equation we haven't talked about are the hospitals. Can you address their relationship with the insurance companies, and more specifically, the tale of the $100 aspirin? What their actual losses are versus what they report their losses are, and how that can affect this marketplace. Because at some point, they have this phrase, uncompensated care. I'm not saying uncompensated care doesn't exist. There's some level of uncollectibles in every business that you're in. But it's always what they cry to the government, you've got to do this to help us negate or pay us back for uncompensated care. But in my opinion, it's hospital math, and it's not accurate.
Well, some of it is hospital math and not accurate, but let's remember where we are in the marketplace, right, where we have the HMOs calling all the shots. And let's be really clear here. You've got two things that are going on. And healthcare, we have to start with the proposition, I'm sorry, we're going to do a little math here, or a little economics, that health insurance healthcare is a resource economics problem. And a widget is the amount of time or whatever service that a patient gets from a medical care provider. Now, the Affordable Care Act increased demand for that widget. And the problem is that we already had a declining supply of those widgets. So you have fewer people providing the care that it needs to be done in an environment of increasing demand. Now, when you have that kind of a situation, right, and remember, insurance in America is not really insurance at all in the truest sense. It's a cost-sharing mechanism like Costco. So if Costco starts running out of paper towels or toilet paper, they go to their supplier, they go to their distributors, and they get more of it. We can't do that with medical care because we have a finite number of medical schools. We have a finite number of residency programs, which is a whole other thing. So here's the problem. The only way you can control for costs in an era in which you have increased demand and declining supply is by lowering your reimbursement rates in terms of medical care. So the HMOs are paying less money for the same services, and this puts the squeeze on hospitals. Now, I'm not saying that hospitals are perfect, and I'm not saying that they don't overcharge for things as a result of trying to make up for these costs. But when you have sort of this idea that the only way you can control for costs in an era of declining supply and increasing demand is by driving down reimbursement rates, that's where you get some of this problem.
Wow. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so if we were to have some antitrust action here, breaking up these companies, do you think it would be easier on hospitals?
Well, I think it might be easier on hospitals, but let's be really clear here. And this sort of gets to the underlying issue really is that we do not have enough medical care to go around. And so part of the impetus behind breaking up the HMOs and pulling away from an HMO-centered model of health insurance is the fact that we don't have real free market competition. So, we don't have real innovation. We don't have the driving down of cost that happens or the driving down of prices that happens. But the real issue here, and let's be very clear about it, is we have to find ways to produce more medical care in America. Now, that means more doctors. That means more nurses. That means more physicians' assistants. It also means that we have to do what we can to encourage hospitals to create residency programs. That's a whole other area in which the HMOs have managed to flummox things for hospitals because the reimbursement rates are different for residency programs. So they're not cost centers, they're cost takers away. But the reality is we need those training programs to create more doctors in America. So, to me, we really missed the boat with the Affordable Care Act in that we not only did we not focus on how we go about solving this problem, we in fact exacerbated listen, you want to use the phrase pre-existing conditions. The pre-existing liabilities in our medical care system in America were exacerbated by the Affordable Care Act. And so we need to be doing whatever we can to turn back that clock.
Andrew Langer, president of the Institute for Liberty. It's always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Look forward to coming back.
All righty. Yes, sir. Absolutely. I'll tell you one thing about medical care, folks, in terms of we need to deliver more medical care. It's $600 a month per person going to insurance companies, regardless of whether or not there's any medical services actually delivered, is not part of the solution. I can tell you that much right now. We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Li. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90%
Bob
of the
Maloney
world's
here
most
with a
advanced
developing
industry,
story from
including
ASA
robotics,
News, the parent.
biotechnology,
China is
artificial
coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs, as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
$870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you would like to contribute to the program today. Let's see here. What else do we have? Oh, yeah, if you're just joining us, first of all, thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We do have a great show for you, rest of the show for you. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, State Representative Brant Smith will be back with us. I'd like to ask him a little bit more about the Arkansas School for Math and Science. They had a hearing last Tuesday where they hauled the heads of the Arkansas School for Math, Science, and the Arts in front of the Joint Performance Review Committee. This is on the heels of revelations that are disturbing, quite frankly, to what the administration was allowing to happen to the students at the Arkansas Center for Math and Science. Insiders will tell you in many ways it's some things going on there that just don't seem right from a discipline level, much less having a privilege walk where they take all of the first-year students and they make them take steps forward and backwards based on social norms. And for example, if you're from a two-parent household, you get to take a step forward. If you're not, you have to take a step backwards. I'm sure if you're a minority, you take a step backwards. If you're a majority, you take a step forwards. And then at the very end of the exercise, you turn around, you look, and you see the people that are disadvantaged. You see what an advantage you have because you're white, let's say, and how disadvantaged everybody. All of these privileges you've had, called the privilege walk. This was something that happened at a taxpayer-funded school in Garland County, Arkansas School for Math, Science, and the Arts. And the reason this is such a big deal is because there are students from all across the state that go to this school. Okay, you start there when you are a junior, and you end your last 2 years of high school. Your junior year and your senior year will be most likely at this school. And that's why you've got legislators who've been hearing from their constituents across the state that go there. So we'll get an update from State Representative Brant Smith coming up at 7:33 about that. And what we're really talking about here is the progressive liberal indoctrination of young minds. I mean, honestly, it's just there's no place for it in a high school environment. There's no place for trying to point out that you're more advantaged than somebody else. and yet here we are. I mean, I look at it as the same thing as taxpayer dollars being used to for the kids to use buses to go to a field trip to hear a transgender author speak. By the way, did you hear about this terrible story about this? This is tragic. You know, there are people who are victimized every single day for a lot of reasons, but there are a lot of things that we could avoid as a society, but we are choosing not to because we are bowing down to this liberal, progressive, postmodern, just malarkey. I wanted to say something else. Walt Heyer at the Daily Signal. He tells a story of a man named Nathaniel, and a heartbreaking story. Less than a year after having gender surgery, Nathaniel now says this whole thing was a bad idea. I'm 19 years old, and I feel as though I have ruined my life. It's heartbreaking each time I get a letter from someone who underwent gender change surgery and regrets it, especially someone as young as Nathaniel. With his permission, I'm telling a bit of his story to raise awareness of the young lives being ruined by the rush to surgery, and hoping that hearing the testimony of this young man will influence others on this path to slow down. In Nathaniel's case, he says he was bullied by the boys in elementary school because he was sensitive and preferred playing with girls. But when he was a bit older, he discovered the internet pornography, heard about transgenderism, and, as he says, convinced myself that's what I was. When he finally worked up the nerve to tell his mother in the summer after 8th grade, listen to what she did. She made an appointment with, in his words, a doctor at an informed consent clinic. He started seeing the doctor a week after his 15th birthday, and from how he describes the next years of his teens, I'd say going to the clinic didn't improve his life. Quote, from then on, he says, I slowly detached from everything until I was just staying home, playing video games, and going on the internet all day. I stopped reading, drawing, riding my bicycle. I surrounded myself in an echo chamber that supported and validated my poor decisions because the others were also unfortunately stuck in that pit too. A month after his 18th birthday, Nathaniel had what he euphemistically called bottom surgery. For a male like Nathaniel, that means refashioning the male genitalia into pseudo-female genitalia. He suffered from complications that required a second surgery a few months later, and he had facial surgery to further feminize his appearance. 9 months later, he says this, quote, now that I'm all healed from the surgeries, I regret them. The result of the bottom surgery looks like a Frankenstein hack job at best, and that got me thinking critically about myself. I had turned myself into a plastic surgery facsimile of a woman, but I knew I still wasn't one. I became, and to an extent still feel, deeply depressed. End quote. Walt Heyer goes on and says this, the unpopular truth, which Nathaniel unfortunately learned the hard way at a young age, is a man is not a woman and can't ever become a woman, even with surgically refashioned genitals and feminizing facial surgery. Nathaniel is a bright young man who never had the benefit of sound, effective counseling, which would have prevented this horrible mistake from happening. He will deal with this for the rest of his life. And then he says this, no one will help this young man detransition. The so-called informed consent clinic, as if a teenager can give informed consent, wash their hands of him. The reckless ideology claims yet another life. And Nathaniel's story is not unique. This is up at the Daily Wire, or I'm sorry, the Daily Signal. The Daily Signal right now. It's absolutely tragic. I hope there are young people listening. Do not buy into this. I can define my own reality. You know? I hate to tell you this. I know it says this in Peter Pan, but just because you have a happy thought does not mean you can fly. Back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Hour number 2. I'm sorry, I'm just doing something here. I am opening up, what does it say? YouTube changes its terms of service. Yeah, that's not good. YouTube going to be changing its terms of service pretty good, and I understand that YouTube, when they do that, they might. Yeah, 0 of 0. Just making sure. No mentions of China in the Roby Brock YouTube video. There's a little transcript. Little transcript thing. You can open up the transcript of what somebody says in a YouTube video. At least according to my computer, the Roby Brock interviewed Governor Asa Hutchinson and didn't ask him one question about his governor, and his law firm, and his son. I guess Talk Business and Politics really loves those Arkansas economic development ads. So, what a complete and total disappointment. This is a complete and total disappointment. I just think it's just fascinating. Is it not fascinating that they won't ask this governor about the conflict of interest that is obvious to get him on record? Is he counsel to his law firm? Is he still counsel to his law firm that's receiving money from Chinese communist entities, the same ones he's already given taxpayer money to? If he's not counsel, is it still not wrong that he's setting up an international law firm and growing it even further because he's governor, so that he's going to walk into these lucrative contracts after he leaves office? Which, by the way, people tell me is like, they're just, at these Republican Party committee meetings I'm going to, I just can't tell you how exhausted people are with Asa, just on everything. It's not even the, I mean, yes, they know with the taxes and everything, like they understand, you know, we tell them about the tax increases and everything else, but not even that. Like, they're just kind of over it. You know what I mean? They're all looking at their watches, and they are waiting for the time when the governor is no longer in the office. They may not say that to you publicly, but that's what they'll say to me. And they're all they're basically just looking at their watch and rolling their eyes and sighing as they watch the Arkansas legislature and the governor do what they're doing. And they're basically saying to themselves, you know what? He's not going to be governor forever. Let's just survive this. We can survive this. You know what I'm saying? We're essentially Wesley and the Princess Bride hooked up to that machine. Not to 50! And we're just kind of enduring it until we can go to Miracle Max, I guess. I don't know. I didn't think that analogy through, because they do actually crank it up to 50 and they kill the guy. Anyway, 870-275-9799. So what was Asa Hutchinson doing? What was he doing on Roby Brock's Talk Business and Politics? Well, he was talking about his support for the sales tax. And so the governor supported the sales tax increase, or keeping the sales tax from sunsetting, to pay for our roads. he did. I guess the governor disagreed with the past. He disagreed with the voters of 2012, who said, you know what, we're going to vote for a half-cent sales tax increase to pay for specific projects that were listed. And in 10 years' time, in 2022, the tax will sunset and our sales tax rate will drop back to where it was. And you know what's sad about all of this is the fact is Arkansas has one of the highest sales taxes in the nation, and we have an income tax. One of the highest sales taxes in the nation, and we have an income tax. And all we're doing at best is cutting around the edges right now with these other tax reforms, and they're fleecing the taxpayer by actually, from a dollar-for-dollar revenue standpoint, they're taking more money. In 2020, fiscal year 2020, $75 million increase in the money coming from the people going to the state of Arkansas. It's a travesty, absolute travesty. Anyway, he was on Talk Business and Politics and talking about that they've got polling. We did some polling, governor says. We made the announcement, before we made the announcement, and it was about 62% of Arkansans either will vote for or probably vote for Issue 1, which is the extension of the half-cent sales tax. And so we were very pleased with that. It still indicates you've got to run a campaign because those that probably you want to make sure they have all the facts and will actually vote for it. Okay, so there you go. We want everyone to have all the facts. I wonder if there's going to be a committee or anything that is formed to try to stop this. What is that? That's not us, is it? I'm sorry. There's apparently... Okay, yeah, sorry. Next door, there's in our studio, we just got blasted with sound here. It's like somebody has the speakers on 100 in the room next door to us. There's other folks doing shows. You have to forgive me. So they want everyone to have all the facts. I wonder if there will be a committee to try to stop this. And it's really simple. I mean, it wouldn't take a lot of money compared to what they're going to spend, what the pro-tax increase people are going to spend. And I call it a tax increase because they're advocating for a tax increase. They're advocating right now, if we do nothing and we don't vote for this thing, and if the legislature hadn't sent this back to us, according to the law, the tax would have just automatically decreased. They're wanting to stop the decrease in your taxes. Asa Hutchinson wants to stop your taxes from decreasing. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is not a conservative thing to do. It wasn't a conservative thing to do back in January. It's not a conservative thing to do now. You want the people to have all the facts. You want the people to have all your facts. Again, people at these Republican committees, they'll even be like, I know we got to have roads. I know all this, but my goodness, can we stop the spending? As they look at their watches and roll their eyes, hoping they can last, hoping that this state will survive a Hutchinson administration. And at the same time, does this China thing not even make you more frustrated? Because it's like you're going to spend all this time acting like a Republican, but are claiming you're Republican, but not actually wanting to implement the platform. That's the governor's legacy, for the most part. There's maybe some silver linings here, but. And then you're going to get rich off of China after you leave office, or you're going to allow your son to use your name and your law firm to take Chinese money. I mean, everything that the governor advocates now is potentially illegitimate because there could be highway contractors that are paying Asa Hutchinson's law firm. It could be understood that you're going to get the contract, and then you're going to tie the portion of the contract and the state money, and tithe a portion of that to my law firm, where my son is working now. And we think he's the head of it, but Asa Hutchinson is still listed as the owner. He's still listed as the top attorney on the website. He's still billed as being the governor and being well connected. And that's how they present themselves to try to get more clients. And all we want to talk about is highways. We want to talk about highways. We're talking about practice. We're going on Roby Brock's Talk Business and Politics, and we're talking about practice, man. We're talking about practice. The elephant in the room. Now, again, I mean, I'm going based on the transcript on YouTube, so I'm assuming that there was no mention of China. And of course there wasn't. Of course there wasn't. Let's see, what else did he said? What else did he say about the roads? Quote, that's important because we want the public to understand what the tentative plan is, but we also want to hear their comments, and there could be some adjustments on the priorities based upon that. Clearly, one thing that's important is that it's in every part of the state. We want every part of the state to benefit from this highway plan. What's the definition of every part of the state? Northwest Arkansas? Just curious. Hutchinson said issue 1 will be the highest political priority in 2020. Huh. You know, there's going to be a lot of Trump voters come out in 2020 in Arkansas. Going to vote for President Trump. I wonder if they're going to vote for a tax increase. Quote, it's all a matter of degree of the candidates, but they understand, you know, the Democrats supported me in so many different ways. They support the Democratic nominee. I'm a Republican. I support the Republican nominee. Now, at the same time, you know, I have high regard for so many of the Democrats that supported this plan, but I'm a Republican. I'll be supporting the Republican nominee. But in terms of my campaign efforts, I want to be focused on that. On issue 1. I want to be focused on issue 1, which is the keeping your taxes from decreasing bill. That sounds fantastic, doesn't it? Unbelievable. We're going to take a break. We're going to reset. Coming up at the bottom of the bottom of this hour, rather, we talk with State Representative Brant Smith. We're going to get an update on the Arkansas School for Math and Science, see what's going on there. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be back here in just a moment.
Are you tired of having to fight the crowds at mega stores just to save money grocery shopping? Well, no more. Bills a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a blue ribbon task force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a blue ribbon legislative task force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who's deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Wrights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon? I think the color should be white.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. PC Wrights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fabulous. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol Dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, some national news that I wanted to get to today. Did anybody see, I know we told you at the top of the hour about that transgender situation, just how tragic that is. But the Right Scoop is reporting, listen to this. This is a big deal. Now, the Democrats are going to say that this is just the Republicans trying to distract from impeachment. But these Epstein didn't kill himself memes are not going away. They're lasting longer than Epstein did himself in prison. These Epstein not killing himself memes. The memes themselves are not killing themselves. That's a good point. Have you seen that they're already starting a Julian Assange didn't kill himself meme because people are assuming that he's going to kill himself or not kill himself? Yeah, they're already starting that one. But so ABC News covered up Jeffrey Epstein, period. That's what happened. And in the meantime, there were countless women. I mean, we were not ever going to know how many women or girls were abused by this guy and his associates. It's just a fact. They had it all 3 years ago. Amy Robach, she said it, and they sat on the story so that they could cover the Prince Kate and Prince William baby celebration or weddings or whatever. Megyn Kelly, who is back in the news here and there, she's trying to, some people say she may even come back to Fox News. She has an exclusive, Megyn Kelly exclusive, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who came to Jonesboro back in 2018 at the Cricket County dinner. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy turns up heat on ABC, demands answers about why they spiked the Epstein story. McCarthy to ABC News, President James Goldston. I'm deeply concerned that ABC News chose to bury the truth. Again, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, again, Megyn Kelly tweet, accuses ABC of enabling Epstein, demands answers. Although it is unclear whether anyone thought to alert authorities, it is clear that ABC News' enabling of Mr. Epstein has consequences, fewer victims willing to come forward. And then there's this other tweet. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy accuses ABC of endangering minors by spiking Epstein's story in 2015. ABC News' enabling of Mr. Epstein raises the possibility that any number of minors could have been spared from human trafficking over the past 3 years. And then Megyn Kelly also posted a photo of the letter here from the House Minority Leader, Republican Kevin McCarthy. Now, again, the left is going to say you're just doing this to distract from impeachment. I don't think so at all. First of all, remember the Me Too movement? Try to find the Me Too movement in the wake of Jeffrey Epstein. You're not going to find them anywhere, okay? Because this guy was so connected. I mean, Amy Robach in the hidden camera or the leaked tape, I mean, she says she was connected, that they had it all. They had it all in the Clintons. They knew, and they spiked the story for whatever reason. Some people think it was because Clinton was running. That's probably the truth, but it also could be these high-up executives at ABC News. They could be on the plane with Epstein. You just don't know. I mean, we know we have the flight logs. I mean, people like Bill Gates and others. Bill Clinton's obviously on the flight logs many, many times. So yeah, this story is huge, and it really just shows you that these mainstream media outlets that claim to be objective, they clearly have agendas. They're not objective. They have agendas. They just, we have to slowly uncover what those agendas are. And in this case, unfortunately, it's covering up for pedophiles. And that's what this is. This is a case where ABC News is covering up for pedophiles. And human trafficking. Now, when's the last time we've heard the words human trafficking associated with what's going on here in Arkansas? Well, I can tell you, it's that guy by the last name of Peterson, Paul Peterson. He's the Arizona. What was he? Was he a county clerk or something? I mean, he's resigned since now, but he's been indicted out of the Western District of Arkansas. Dwayne Dak Keys saying this is a clear example of human trafficking, where he's taking these Marshallese pregnant women from the Marshall Islands, bringing them in here, and adopting them out. And they said something like 9 out of every 10 adoptions in Benton County had to do with a Marshallese child. And then the only problem I have with this, the indictment, is they said, the parents, the people who adopted these kids are not suspects. And that's fine. I understand that to a degree, but don't we at least want to go check up on these kids at this point, right? And I don't know about you, I've never seriously considered adoption, I've considered adoption, but I never have gone so far as to like, okay, where do I start? Never actually gotten to the part of like, we're doing this now. I mean, if you knew you wanted to adopt a kid and you knew that there was this one attorney but he was specializing in getting pregnant women from the Marshall Islands to come over, and that was the process, am I the only one that would be like, maybe this is wrong in some way, or maybe this doesn't seem quite right, where they had several women in one house in Springdale, all this other nonsense going on. And this guy can practice law in Arizona, he can practice law in Arkansas, and he practices law in Utah. So it's like a multi-state thing too, as well. I mean, at the very least, that was one of the strangest stories, and how it's kind of disappeared. I mean, you kind of see every now and then the guys, filings and everything else, but I think at this point it would be of public interest to know every family that adopted a child from this guy. Not to invade their privacy, not to put their name and address down, or you'd think that somebody with the authorities would go and be like, okay, where is this family at now? Okay, are they in Arkansas? Was there a lot of Arkansas families adopting these children? All I'm saying is you need to at least be asking the question, because if you're going to say this was human trafficking pure and simple, then you also would need to wonder, for what purpose? Is it just adoption? Okay, that's fine. But anyway, I'm to the point where I don't want to assume anything. You know what I mean? I just don't want to assume that I don't want to assume people's best intentions. I'm kind of through with give them the benefit of the doubt. Not when it comes to this. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back with State Representative Brant Smith. We're going to talk about the Arkansas School for Math, Science, and the Arts back in a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. We need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. As always, it's great that you're with us. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Joining us now, we have in studio with us State Representative Brant Smith is back with us. Brant, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Paul. Just thankful to God for another day to put my feet down on the ground.
That's exactly right. I concur. What can you tell us about the Joint Performance Review Committee? Last Tuesday, finally, you guys got to talk to the people in positions of authority at the Arkansas School for Math, Science, and the Arts.
Well, prior to that JPR hearing, a select group of us did meet with ASMSA's director, Corey Alderdice. We met at least with him once. We met with Melissa Rust both times, and then Dr. Don Bobbitt.
Okay.
And so
this was before the
meeting.
Right,
before the meeting.
Yeah.
These were just, come in, let's talk. And they were willing to come in. And so those were substantive meetings as far as information back and forth, what we felt like we needed to know, what their responses to our questions were. And then, of course, Representative Jimmy Gazaway, who is a co-chair on JPR, also co-chair with Senator Hickey, who stepped out. He was out of pocket that day, and so Senator Rice stepped in to co-chair. They did a great job, but the takeaway for me was, and that they were not placed under oath, but I think there'll be another hearing soon. It could be after the holidays, but it will take place, and that we will place them under oath at that time.
Really?
Well, because some of the comments to questions, the responses came back to us in that hearing. We felt like they weren't honest answers. And some of the statements made by Director Alderdice in a radio interview down in Hot Springs last week seemed to contradict his statements before the Joint Performance Review Committee. And so comments that related to drug use, drugs being found.
You're talking about with students?
With the students, and how that some of these students, were basically slapped on the wrist, their drugs taken and disposed of, but we don't know what does that mean, disposed. Did someone take it and use those drugs for personal use on the staff down there, Res Life staff, or did they actually flush them or, get rid of them? And the comment was that they had a special agreement or arrangement made with the Hot Springs Police Department to do that, and I suspect that it was to prevent negative publicity. But the comment to me later was, why would the students at ASMSA have any special privileges over other high school students in our other schools in the Hot Springs area? So there's a lot of things that just didn't match. I mean, they were evasive, deflective. At one point, I asked Corey to describe his leadership style. And I said, let me preface that by saying, you've been identified as a bully. You've been identified as a manipulator, an intimidator, and I went through a list. And so I said, tell me how you see yourself. Describe your leadership style. And he went through this thing. You can go online and find it, but I came back with a follow-up question, and I said, so let me get this right. Everyone that's come out with their understanding of your leadership and being on the receiving end of some of your behavior, they're all wrong, and you're the only one that's right. And that created a little anxiety, I would suspect.
Yeah, and the descriptions of Director Alderdice are from just a lot of griefs, former staff or teachers and that sort of thing.
Well, and some have been let go.
And let go, yeah.
Yeah, that's a kind word for they were fired.
They were fired, yeah.
Or they just felt so pressured they couldn't take it anymore.
Right,
and they left.
Yeah, and this was remind us, State Representative Brant Smith, about the privilege walk. That was kind of the big first thing that we heard about.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about the privilege walk? Did that come up at all?
It came up a couple of times, and the fact is the privilege walk is no longer being presented to the incoming juniors at ASMSA. And so that tells me and many of the members on JPR, if you no longer do this, there must have been something really wrong with it from the very beginning. And, there were comments made, well, no student really ever claimed, it impacted them or hurt them, or stressed them. But see, that's not true either, because we know that there have been numerous students that felt like, you've identified me as privileged, but then on the other side of it, there were students that came forward and said, you outed me
as being disadvantaged.
As being disadvantaged. And in a school like that, you want a cohesive student body. you want students from all walks to come together and move in the same direction toward achievement and excellence. And that one exercise basically drove a wedge between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
And the kids that don't have much in comparison to the kids that have substantially more, it's not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
They are the product of a home environment where maybe parents are overachievers or they've been very frugal and successful in business as opposed to those that are just struggling day to day. But why do we have to identify that?
Yeah.
So these kids, all of a sudden, it's like Johnny doesn't have a new pair of shoes. He buys his shoes from, one of the secondhand stores, while this student always goes to the superstores and buys the latest and greatest pair.
That's not doing anybody any good.
No, not at all. So those were things that happened, but supposedly it's gone.
So it's gone now. Let me ask you about some other some other politicians on the committee. State Representative Mark Lowry. I'm told he asked some questions.
Mark did ask some very good questions. He tended to focus on the internal review or investigation, and if my memory serves me right, he questioned the validity of that document, and because there was so much redacted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those of us that sat in on the private meetings with ASMSA and Dr. Don Bobbitt, we were privileged to actually see the unredacted version, but it was very damaging and very forthtelling of the problems that people stated regarding Director Alderdice. And so that's why the released version, public version, had been redacted so heavily.
Yeah. Also, tell me about, because, I told the folks earlier the reason, you're a state representative from Jonesboro, but you have constituents who sent their kids down to this.
Right.
This is why all these legislators really have a stake here. But one of the legislators from Garland County, Senator Alan Clark, he had a few things to say as well, right?
Well, in the private meetings, he mentioned a few things, but he was fairly quiet, observing, listening, processing what he was hearing. But the day, the 12th, when we had JPR, man, bless Alan's heart, he is an advocate for kids. And he basically said, look, to the panel that was in front of us, I would give the school an A for academics, but a D when it comes to working with kids. And he said, because of my background as a former youth pastor, I know how to work with kids, so I have some knowledge about this. But he questioned also a program or two where the LGBTQ agenda was presented to the kids, and he just was wondering, why would you do that? There is an agenda, we know. I mean, I've been on the receiving end of a lot of hateful speech because of some bills I ran, but he just took the lid off and it flowed out.
Yeah. Well,
and
that's a new development, though. I hadn't heard, I heard about the privilege walk, heard about, just not a very constructive environment. Haven't heard about LGBTQ programs.
Well, and I wasn't there. I didn't see or hear the program. I don't suppose it was recorded. But it's just, be transparent. That was the part that we wanted most in the JPR hearing. For transparency's sake, and now that word has become less meaningful in so many ways, what is transparency? How much do you share? But, Senator Clark wanted to bring that up, that maybe there is an agenda down there where the LGBTQ students are brought in and allowed more credence to support their lifestyles. And,
Interesting.
Well, and it's just a sad thing. It's almost like the privilege walk. If those students have not felt comfortable publicly stating, this is my orientation, this is my preference, why would you do that to them? And it caused some problems with the students that are considered straight. You know, why would you expose me to this stuff? It's almost like the transgender that came and spoke at the Jonesboro Public Library. Why would you expose children to that? What's the purpose of that?
Exactly. Well, it's a normalization is really what it is for something that...
Well, desensitizing our young people.
Yeah, absolutely.
To move into that questioning step.
Yeah. Now, so talk about taxpayer funding, because that's the issue here. Our taxpayer dollars are going to this, but the U.S., the School for Math, Science, and the Arts, they're actually under the University of Arkansas system.
Correct.
All right. Now, so was there discussion about changing that formula?
Well, I did mention, I said if I had, you know, my personal preferences, and I'm addressing the panel, I said I would like to see ASMSA moved out from under U of A, the U of A system, and brought under, and I think I mentioned, I don't know if Dr. Johnny Key would be interested in that, but I think it would be better to move them under ADE. And I'd also like to see Director Alderdice removed. And, of course, they all had responses, and one was ADE doesn't have the skill or the, I guess, history knowledge of running a school where students are boarded. Well, immediately following the hearing, someone approached me and said, but ADE oversees the blind school and the deaf school, and those children are housed in a boarding situation. So, yes, they do. And so some of the arguments that ASMSA made, they're valid. They're providing more oversight, more, I guess, administrative control. But that's also reason to say that there were serious problems if they're implementing these changes.
Yeah.
But we don't know where this is going to go. But
did you feel like you got to the bottom of everything? We're at the bottom yet, or we still have more digging to do?
I think we have more digging to do because some of the, I believe Representative Mark Lowry was on a radio broadcast program down in Hot Springs. And within a few minutes, when his interview concluded, Director Alderdice went on that same program and was interviewed. And some of the comments made by Director Alderdice contradicted his statements in front of JPR. And so the next time, and we will bring them back, according to the co-chair, we'll bring them back, but Senator Trent Garner mentioned we need to put them under oath. And that's going to happen. And when it does, there'll be people going through all of this with a fine-tooth comb to see, well, where did they perjure themselves? Where did they contradict themselves, you know, maybe multiple times? And one of the things I brought up was I had information passed me that some of the grants that ASMSA receives, some of that money was channeled to another project that was unrelated to the grant. And so the person that spoke to me said they confronted Director Alderdice, and he had flat out mentioned, well, I haven't been caught yet. So I can't validate all of that. I'm hoping that it's not true, but if that's true, legislative audit, the auditors down there, they will find that out. They're really good at looking for discrepancies and where did that money go. And so it's a matter of time.
Yeah.
And after the hearing was over, I mentioned to co-chair Jimmy Gazaway, I said, Jimmy, I started to conclude my remarks were to Director Alderdice. If I were you and you were me, I'd be getting my CV or my resume put together, updated. And he said, well, I'm glad you didn't do that, you know. And I said, I know it sounded terrible, but somebody has been doing some things that are so wrong that even with the shift and the changes and things have improved greatly, I will agree to that. It goes back to why did they think they could get away with this behavior for so long?
That's exactly right.
So heads may roll.
That's exactly right.
And it doesn't bring me any personal pleasure. I'm not looking for a job down there. Like if I can get this person out, maybe I can step in, you know. It's just doing what's right for my constituents.
Real quick, we're talking with State Representative Brant Smith about the Arkansas School of Math and Science. He did file for re-election. Any surprises about that? I know you've
I just heard Joe sigh real big. So is that a negative from you, Joe?
I think,
you're stretching. Well, we'll allow that.
I think Joe's just ready for us to go to break. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Well, no, I filed on the first day.
Okay.
I am eager to serve District 58. I love the role. And I've been down there long enough, even though I don't consider myself establishment. We've got to have some history in our legislators that are there long enough to know where the skeletons are.
Context.
Or to know which door to look behind, who to trust and who to be leery of. And so I've reached that point with 3 terms now that I want to go back. I want to complete some of the things that we've started. And so I need another term. And I'm hoping that the people of District 58 who know me, know my values, my biblical worldview, that will make a difference in not only the primary that we have in March, but once we get past that, will sustain us and send me back to Little Rock after the general in November.
Yeah. State Representative Brant Smith, I appreciate it. It's always great to have you on.
It's a privilege, Paul.
Okay, it's a privilege.
It's a privilege walk.
We will, we're going to take a break. Going to be back here in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
For reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you, guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
Folks, as a taxpayer,
money, power, prestige, essence, available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. from the Nata Rhino collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. Nepotism. The aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal. Deception. Deep state. Ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
There it is. The old microphone. Folks, thank you so much for being with us. Telephone number 870-275-9799 is the telephone number. We only have a few minutes. Do we have the meme of the day? Can you get that queued up? This was... we forgot to push the button on Friday, but this is our meme of the day for your Monday. This is courtesy of Instagram, do_nothing_Democrats. So the do nothing Democrats. And you got a script here. So the time traveler says, is that an Epstein meme? Me. Yeah, time traveler. The Clinton trial memes are even better. Me. And you get that excited face from the, what's that guy's name from the Parks and Rec? Chris Pratt, whatever. Andy, or yeah, not Andy. I can't remember, but anyway, the guy from Parks and Recreation, the Chris Pratt's character. So we'll post that up on the Twitter at Conduit News Twitter feed here shortly. So certainly want to stay tuned for that. And I would direct you at the headline conduitforaction.org, the great silence at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. On November 5th, Conduit News reporting about Governor Asa Hutchinson being in China with meetings with those Chinese businesses. And, of course, then we found out, it all started with a photo. It all started with the governor in a photo with T.Y. Garment's chairman and his son, Asa III. And then we found out that the governor's law firm that's supposedly being run by Asa III has all these Chinese clients. That's what... We're just kind of still scratching our head. Why is this not a story? Other than the KATV story that made it into the mainstream media, nothing from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette yet. And we're just wondering why. You guys tell me. You guys, I don't know. It's just, to me, the silence is a story in and of itself. I've never seen anything like this. We will have more on this as it develops. Folks, that's all the time we have for this morning, but we're going to be back here with bells on tomorrow at 6:05. So please don't forget to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications. We would very, very much appreciate it. Arkansas, have a great day and be safe.